Immediately after my conversion to Islam, my relationships with my family became quite difficult. My mother is Christian. I've been brought up to be a very religious Christian. My father is a convert from Hinduism to Christianity. Because of that reason, he accepted my conversion. But my mother found it very hard. I actually wanted to be a vicar when I was growing up. I was very well versed in Christian theology at the time, and so it was quite a big shock for her because she sort of had seen me amongst my three siblings as the one that would grow up to be the very religious Christian. She was very proud of that. So it was a huge disappointment to her when at the age of 18 I came home and said, sorry mum, I'm a Muslim. So that was quite difficult. On my father's side of the family, although he had to accept it, my grandparents are Hindu. They lived through the partition between Pakistan and India. Because they were not Muslim, they were made to leave Lahore, their native town. Members of my family were killed in the partition by Muslims. And this is the impression, that this created a very negative impression of Muslims to them, as you would expect. So it was also very hard for them. I didn't tell them for 5 years, actually, that I'd become Muslim. And when I finally did tell them, they were, for obvious reasons, very upset, very angry, and felt very betrayed. So when one becomes a Muslim, one obviously has to go somewhere to learn about Islam. Now this can be quite hard because you can face the challenge of, well, is this in the religion? Or is this actually something that's come from someone's culture? From a Pakistani culture or a Bangladeshi culture. Now, at the beginning of my conversion, I was lucky enough to have converted thanks to friends who were very much like me, who I saw as very westernized. They were of Egyptian, Pakistani, and Turkish backgrounds, a very diverse group of people. And I came to Islam through a theological conviction. I came to believe, let's say I came to Islam because it confirmed my Christianity to me. It won a lot of theological arguments. It won the theological argument over the Trinity. It made more sense to me. Now, those friends of mine were very much like me, but to get further knowledge, I needed to go to a mosque. And that's where I was first confronted with the culture versus faith dynamic. When I went to the mosque, what I found was a door closed in my face because the mosque didn't allow women in. So this was my first shock. I didn't understand why it would be the case that in the main faith institution of Islam, there wouldn't be a space for women. Why wouldn't there? I would have never expected that. And that pushed me to ask more questions. Well, is this within Islam or is this cultural? And from asking questions to friends around me, I came to understand that this was largely cultural. You find it amongst South Asian populations, for example. That's within their culture to only have men in the mosque. In Arab mosques, women are accepted. And so over time, I was given guidance as to the mosques that I could go to. So the hijab is something which is expected of you almost when you come into Islam. So it's one of these, we talked about culture within the religion. And one of these cultural expectations is you adopt the religion, you adopt, the garb that goes with it, and within that is the hijab. It's obviously a big issue. And it's also, when you become, as a convert, you're almost a bit of a trophy. So to be able to show, physically that you are a Muslim is something which is very much commended in many circles in the Muslim community. Now, I personally did wear a headscarf about 4 years into my conversion. The reasons I wore a headscarf, though, were, and I associate with many other born Muslim women on this, were more to do with the fact that I was at university. My interest was in my faith, it was in my studies, it was in my friends. It was not in going out and dating guys or meeting guys, and I didn't want male attention. So I put on the headscarf for that reason. I couldn't say to myself, hand on heart, this is for God. It hadn't won on the theological merits. I have a lot of questions about that. It's not clear in the Quran, and it's not specifically clarified. And when you look back at the theology, from my own perspective where I am now, it seems to be something that's been built into the religion over time. In the Prophet Society, some women wore it and others didn't. Now, I wore it for a long time, for 7 years. I stopped wearing it because I, partly because of medical reasons, actually, I have psoriasis, and so I was advised to take it off. But actually, there was a part of me that wasn't uncomfortable with taking it off, because wearing it, one of the issues for me was, well, people think you're very pious when you wear a headscarf. They think you're a knowledgeable, very pious woman. And it made me question where my intentions came from when I did, good actions, or when I spoke about my faith. Am I doing it because people perceive me to be a pious woman, or am I genuinely doing these actions for God? So for me, actually taking it off, as much as putting it on, was an act of humility. So I think converts to Islam have a huge role to play in bridging the non-Muslim and the Muslim community. And the reason why is because in our families, we're asked all the time those hard questions that, non-Muslims probably wish that they could ask to all Muslims. And most Muslims would feel offended by, because, I have been in the position of my family where I've had negative stereotypes about Muslims. So when they question me in pretty harsh ways about my religion, I can relate to them. So I'm a lot more calm, I can see where they're coming from, and I can answer those questions. And then, on the other side of the coin, while I've been in the Muslim community for 13 years now, and starting to myth bust about some of the stereotypes of what it means to be British is also something that I can do quite robustly. So, I can talk about how my mother is a very pious Christian who doesn't think it's great to go out and get drunk every Saturday, so that stereotype's a bit wrong. So it's great to be in that position where you can bridge the two worlds.